Hey y'all, welcome, welcome, welcome. This is Black Women Leave America podcast, the live edition. We have been having so much fun with these live. We've been doing reaction videos. We've had some of our favorite past guests coming back to join us. So as always, we want to hear from you. Let us know what you would want to see here. If it's somebody you want us to have, invite back from our previous 2 seasons, let us know. Today, we're really excited. We were already getting the conversation going before we turned the live button on. So hopefully we can recreate the magic because Natisha has already been sharing some gems, y'all. So hopefully she remembers what she was talking about. But she joined us for our first season of Black Women Leave America, and we're really happy to have her back. Definitely want to get some updates, see where she is now. But before we do that, Natisha, go ahead and tell our viewers a little bit about who you are and where you are in the world right now.
Sure. Hey, y'all. Thanks so much. First off, thank you for having me.
Thank you for
I
being here.
forgot that I was with y'all the first season. I think that was when I first moved abroad. So at the moment, I'm in Guadalajara, Mexico. Um, I am a 5-time certified coach. That's my passion. That's what I do. Um, I've been abroad for 5 years, since 2018. And what else am I supposed to say? I love jazz and
Whatever
meeting
you want.
people, making connections, and talking about pursuing our destiny. I created the Imposter Freedom Leadership Academy a few years ago because when I first moved abroad, one of the things that I began doing was studying indigenous healing traditions. I heard that's what I was supposed to do. I didn't know what that was. And so it led me to Belize, Thailand, and learning how indigenous people heal themselves from trauma. And so in 2020, right after the pandemic started, I realized, number one, because I have so many certifications in coaching, I recognize that talking about trauma, at least in the way that we seem to know it, um, was not the way that I wanted to talk about trauma. Right. So I knew that for a lot of trauma was outside of my scope. It was not in my lane. Right. It was too deep for coaching. And so I started focusing on imposter syndrome and doing research into how imposter syndrome was actually a trauma response to the experiences that many Black women have in corporate America, living in America. And so that led me to begin helping more of us find the courage to use our voices and pursue what I believe is the calling on our lives, while healing from the trauma that we experienced at work. So
I love that. And we certainly have that in common. Like definitely looking at mental health traditionally, how it's really been and saying this is not going to work for us. There
mhm.
has to be another way. There has to be a better way. And what does that look like?
Yeah.
And so I could not agree more. That's certainly been, my career for the last 18 years now. And even, this podcast is an extension of that, right? Like, one of the ways that we're now dealing with our mental health and practicing self-care is leaving.
Yeah.
And sometimes that is what, your self-care is going to look like. That is what your peace and your freedom is going to look like. And so, that certainly seems to be the case for you. So, what initially caused you, and now it's been 5 years, what initially caused you to say, you know what, I'm leaving. And now at this space where you are, right, we've been talking, like you said, I don't really want to go back. But what initially sparked that interest?
I mean, for me, I mean, my first trip abroad was an awakening, right? Like I'm one of those people. I don't know what it means to live in a place your entire life, right? So
Mm,
my entire life, I never lived in a place longer than 3 years. That was like the max. Most of the time, I was moving or changing schools every other year. Right. So for me, change is normal. It's a normal part
mm,
of life. If you want to advance, if you want to grow, if you want a better life, you got to move, right? Like physically,
makes sense.
like in real life, you need to move. So because of that, I had lived all over the country. But my college roommate was from Nigeria, and I've been begging her, girl, when you going back home? Like, when can I come with you? Right. So in my mind, you first off, you travel with other people, right?
Mm.
So when she got married, at that time, I think I might have been 27. It was like 2008. I went to Nigeria. That was my very first trip abroad.
Wow.
And I was like, oh, this is bad. This, first off, coming from Chicago, it's summer in the winter. It's 85 degrees in December. Oh, this is how I'm supposed to be living, right? There's people waiting on you at the airport. There's people
Mhm.
cooking. There's people cleaning. She had a house girl. She had a driver. She
Mhm.
had, you know, a guest house. And mind you, we back in college, we were two broke students in Champaign, Illinois,
So
right?
you like, why are you living like that?
Not why, right? Because the interesting, like I'm from a, you know, my parents were working class, so it was normal. Like, I wouldn't say poverty was normal, because I don't know that we would necessarily poor,
Mhm.
right? Like I remember making a Christmas list and I would actually get stuff, right? So I didn't think we were poor, but not having a lot or not having excessive, right, amounts of whatever, that was
Mhm.
normal. So to go from to real, and for me it wasn't even the money, it was the lifestyle,
Yeah,
right? So
sounds
it
like.
never dawned on me that it was more expensive, right? Or that, like, I didn't know about exchange rates, but I didn't think about it. It was just like, oh, this is how, oh, this is okay. If this is
Mhm.
achievable in my mind. This is
Mhm.
the same person, right? We eating whatever we eating, and this is where you from? Bet this is
Mhm.
the life I need to be living. So it
Mhm.
never dawned on me that I needed to have a
No.
certain amount of money. It was just, okay, how do I do it? So literally from that point forward, my focus was on how do I live abroad. At that time, there was only three ways: teach math, teach English, Peace Corps.
Mm.
And I knew I wasn't doing none of that. So I'm like, I hated English the first time. Like, I barely speak English now. I'm not teaching it. Grammar, no, not happening. So it was all for me, it was like, okay, how I'm waiting for the opportunity. I'm waiting for something to show
Mhm.
up, right? Like
Mhm.
something's going
But
to
you
come
were
up.
intentional, like really, you were manifesting, like it was there.
Something's coming. I don't know
Yeah.
what it is. And so I think that was 08, 09, 2010. I started thinking about, that's when I moved to Maryland, and I was like,
Mhm.
okay, how do I, maybe I need a cash career, right? So at that time I
Mhm.
had a bachelor's in accounting, a master's in nonprofit management. I was pursuing a PhD in higher education. I was like, but that's not going to help me get abroad. Maybe I need a cash career. So I went to massage school, dropped out the PhD, went to massage school.
PhD dropout from massage school.
3 times. I didn't
I
drop out
love
of
it.
3 PhD programs.
I love
Okay.
it.
So again, for me, if you want to grow, you need to change. Like,
Yes,
once you
sis.
realize that something is not going to help you get to where you want to be, drop it. Let's get to where you want to be.
Listen, that's a gem right there. I hope y'all heard that. Like, once you realize this is not going to
This ain't
get you
it.
where you want to be, let it go.
I mean, my therapist told me that recent. I thought that was normal. Like, it's like, I want to get to A, this not helping me get there. Why am I still doing this? Right.
It's
So
not.
that's like people, relationships, jobs, like whatever it is.
Mhm.
But in any event, so went to massage school. I actually I connected with an organization where they were talking about moving abroad. Again, in my
Mhm.
mind, I need other people in order to go. Join the organization. Um, Turns out they were not ready at the same time that I was ready. And then
Mhm.
the values started conflicting, right? Like, I realized, actually, they asked me to leave. And when they asked me to go, I was like, oh, okay, this probably isn't it. Leaving that organization, I realized that it was an emotionally
Mm.
borderline abusive, like, it just,
Toxic.
the leadership, it was not healthy. It was not an emotionally healthy environment.
Mhm.
And so that was my first time trying to move abroad. I went to Belize, sold
Okay.
everything, and ran out of money in like 2 months, right?
Okay. So this
And
is important. So you went. Some would
Yeah.
consider that quote unquote failure, right? So sold
Yeah, I
everything,
didn't look
did
at
it,
it as a
ran out of
failure.
money. So did you have to come
Yeah.
back?
I was trying to negotiate a consulting contract with a nonprofit organization because my master's degree is in nonprofit.
Mm-hmm.
And when I realized that they were trying to pay me less than what I could make at McDonald's, I said, you know what? It's all good. Let me go back to the States. Let me figure out another way.
Okay.
Um, and so, ironically, when I came back, I went to a business conference, my first business conference ever. It was in Atlanta. And somebody told me I should be a life coach. And I'm like, I'm
Mhm.
not coaching. No, I'm not a life coach. They were like, yes, you are. I'm like, no, I'm not.
You done got enough degrees,
I'm
certifications.
not a life coach. I'm barely piecing together my own life. I'm still trying to figure this thing out.
That's funny.
But someone I met at that conference told me about an organization that offers free life coaching. Signed up to get coaching,
Mhm.
end up being partnered with the executive director of that organization. And she's like, why aren't you coaching? So she sponsored my life coach certification training.
Wow.
Yep. So that was like, okay, what I have forgot and what I failed to mention, the reason that I wasn't interested in coaching was some years prior when when I first went abroad, I'd applied for a success coaching role. At the time, I was an academic advisor for an online university, and they had a success coaching department. All their coaches went through ICF training, like the whole
Mhm.
nine. And I'd applied, and the manager at that time, Ike Smith, hey Ike, told me that I did not know what coaching was, and I didn't have a proper understanding of coaching. And I
Wow.
vowed, screw coaching, I'm gonna do everything else. So I started doing all these other certifications,
But really coaching.
basically, right?
You
Like
just end up right back.
I ended up setting myself up to be an amazing coach. So I got certified in Myers Briggs, so I started learning how
Mhm.
to interpret and analyze this scientific right
Mhm.
instrument. I started doing I learned about DISC and
Yep.
true colors and all these
Yep.
personality assessments and the science behind
Mhm.
them and validity and all these things. And so yeah,
Wow.
to wind up and like I said, having someone pay for my coach certification
So
at
another
that time.
lesson, just because somebody say you can't do something doesn't mean that they are correct.
Yeah. Yeah, regardless of what status they held, right? Because he was really respected. You know, he was a black man leading this department of coaches. There was a lot of black people in that department. Like he held a lot of regard, but sometimes folks be
Mhm.
wrong. Sometimes folks be wrong. So wound up actually at a school at a university that had a master's degree in health and wellness coaching.
Mm.
Because I was an employee, I could take classes for free. So guess
Hey
who
now.
enrolled in another coaching certification, right? So this time another free one because, well, technically free. Um, and then I ended up getting laid off. When I got laid off, that's when I moved to Mexico Playa in 2018, and
Wow.
end up working for a health coaching app that ironically many of my students who I had advised, I was their advisor, were now
Mhm.
working at the same app,
Wow.
right? And then
Yeah.
there were also some professors from that coaching program who were also working at this app. So
Ain't
at
that
that
something?
time, it was the largest employer of coaches that I knew about.
Wow.
It grew. I think I remember at the time when I started it in 2018, it was about maybe 500 or 600 coaches. It grew to a team
Wow.
of about 3,000
Oh my
at its
goodness.
height. And so in that growth, right, because I was traveling, right?
Mhm.
So I could work from wherever. So I was in
Mhm.
Bali, I was in Thailand, I was in
Mhm.
Malaysia, like going to jazz clubs and jazz festivals in Indonesia and like doing, living this life.
Mhm.
Um, and then I found out they had a health coach certification. Sign me up. It's free in there. So that was my third certification uh, program. Went through it. Noticed they didn't have any black instructors. Hey, y'all
Mm.
need some
How about that?
facilitators. So I started. Actually, I got on the training team. So then I was in charge of
Mm.
training coaches.
Oh, wow.
My therapist at the time told me there was a diversity, equity, inclusion position that opened up. I wasn't sure if I wanted it because I recognized the Black woman who was in charge of it. Even though
Mm-hmm.
we worked at a coaching company, not a lot of people actually got coaching, which for me felt out of integrity. Like
That's
here
a
we are,
whole nother subject.
right? Like here we are doing, and I mean, not just they didn't get coaching, like they had a free, like they would get free therapy. Like the companies,
Mm-hmm. And
they
they
wouldn't
didn't
sign up for therapy neither. And I'm like,
mm-hmm.
how that work? So I knew the manager, even though she was a Black woman and I loved her, my concern was I don't know. I trigger people who don't invest in their own personal growth and development. I'm
Mm.
very clear about that because I'm always growing. I'm always learning. I'm right. So people who don't, we tend to bump heads because you're not growing, learning. So you're not really, oh, you
Mhm.
haven't heard the things I'm telling you from any place else. And so most of what I'm saying to you is going to bump up against your belief system hard, especially if you're not, because you're not learning and growing, you're not open to anything other
Exactly.
than, plus you're probably
Exactly.
stressed and overwhelmed, full of
Mhm.
anxiety, because again, you're not getting support, right? So all of these things lead to us not really having the best relationship. All that to say, so I was concerned. I was a little nervous about applying for this role. My therapist at the time was like, "You should apply." I applied. It was a diversity, a DEI project
Mhm.
coordinator role.
Okay.
Within 6 months, I was promoted to a DEI project manager role. Within another 6 months, I was promoted to a diversity business partner role.
Wow.
Right. So, in a period of like a year and a half, I got 3 promotions.
Wow. All while traveling. Were
I
you in
was
one place at that time, or were you still
I
kind
was
of
living in Playa del Carmen.
okay?
Well, I was mostly based in Playa del Carmen. Like I had an
Okay.
apartment in Playa del Carmen.
Okay.
Somewhere in there, I ended up moving to Tulsa as part of
Okay.
Tulsa Remote because I grown tired of Playa. Love Playa, right? But I realized I was trying to convince myself that I should be grateful for living in paradise more than I was actually enjoying living in paradise. And so
Wow.
that's when it started. I was like, I need to live somewhere else. So I created
Mm.
this sheet, this worksheet for myself that I give to clients all the time. I call it the love hate shifts to create worksheet. And
Mhm.
so I began to identify, okay, what do I love about this place? What do I hate about this
Mhm.
place? And then what is the shifts that I need to create in my next place? Right? Like what
Mhm.
do I need to have in the next place?
Yeah.
Um, and an opportunity, somebody sent an email about this program called Tulsa Remote, like within days of me filling out this worksheet. And I was like, why not? Like, I don't give a damn. I'll go to Tulsa. So I kept my apartment, actually put out the call for someone, put out to my network. Anybody want to rent my
So you
apartment?
renting it out. Mhm.
And it was like immediate. Somebody was like, absolutely, we right up the street. We can be there tomorrow. I'm like, oh, snap. Okay, this is
Wow.
moving way. All right, I guess I'm going to Tulsa. So got my Mexican residency, went to Tulsa,
Wow.
hated it.
I was wondering.
Hated it. But I want to say that I hated it, but it had none of the things that I actually wanted. And so
Yeah.
it was actually a blank slate. It was like a plain canvas that
Mhm.
okay, I'm able to paint on it whatever I want. So that's where I decided, okay, I want to live somewhere where there's sun. I want to live somewhere on a concert path, right, where people come and have concerts
Okay.
here. I want jazz clubs, right? I want to be able to eat outside. So it doesn't have to be a beach town,
Mhm.
but these are the things that I want. So I kind of
Mhm.
began to design the life that I wanted while I was in Tulsa.
There you go.
And all during that time, what I was realizing was it was time for me to leave that job. I've been there. I was like, this is my senior year. It's my fourth year. I don't like the way this direction, where this thing is heading, right? They started doing layoffs, which was even
Okay.
more of I don't like the way y'all doing layoffs. Like I'm working and creating culture. Like it just, again, bumping heads. The head of the
Mhm.
organization they don't get coaching, right? So for me, right, I began to realize, oh, this is like a values. Like we don't share the same values. Y'all lead a coaching, well, what I thought was a coaching
I
company.
mean,
It's
a lot
actually
of
a
them are
tech.
tech companies. They're
It's a
not
tech
coaching
company. It's not
companies.
a coaching company.
Mm.
Even though we had a team of 3,000 coaches,
Mhm.
essentially it was almost if you work at a McDonald's and these were the frontline employees. right?
Mhm.
So it's not exactly, yeah, they don't necessarily, it's not exactly coaching so much. And so all, like, mind you, I'm in Tulsa. I got this new job. I've gotten like a $40,000 pay increase.
Mhm.
Um, and I'm investing a lot of that in coaching programs,
But
career
you are
coaching.
reinvesting back into yourself.
Absolutely. Career coaching. I invested in the company invested in a DEI strategy course for me,
Mhm.
which she also did consulting. So I'm like, okay, I think I want to figure out this business. So she did some operations consult. So I paid her for operations consulting. I hired another career coach to help me with my resume and my
Mhm.
LinkedIn. I mean, you name it. I feel like I was, and I had a therapist at the time. So
I'm,
I'm
I'm,
just
I'm with
like,
it.
what we need to do, right? So I ended up getting well, my grandmother died. I took bereavement, and while I was on bereavement, I ended up getting laid
Mhm.
off.
Oh
I
my goodness.
was, but I was so excited
What? First of
because
all, though, I mean, really? This is what we doing now? This is how we treat people? I mean,
listen,
I'm
I
glad
told
you were
you
excited. I'm
first
glad
of
you were, but
that I
that could
wouldn't
have
have
gone
to.
all the way left.
It could have, but thankfully, because I'd been in coaching this entire time,
Mm, mm,
right? And I didn't mention how in 2019 I went on this whole social media thing about trying to get more Black people in the company because I noticed there wasn't many. And about
mm,
100 Black folks applied, 10 got hired, 5 of them went into leadership. But one of them ended up having another job because they didn't pay nothing. Well, she told me, you might want to apply to this other company I'm working at. And I had, right? So, in the midst of me looking for jobs, applying for jobs,
so
interviewing
you
for
were already
jobs,
ready.
so by the time I got laid off, literally I got laid off on a Tuesday. By Friday, the company who I'd applied to 3 weeks prior sent me an email say, "Hey, did you see our last email? Do you want to interview?" Laid off on a Tuesday. By that following Sunday, I'd already had another job.
Mm, mm, mm.
So it wasn't a DEI job, which is what I was applying
No.
for. But
Mhm.
truthfully, I ain't like working in DEI. Trying to
Yeah.
convince people to be human, like compassionate to folks who don't look like
I
them.
I have done DEI speaking, and yeah, the
So
money's
DEI
good.
speaking is different than I work
The
in a
money's good.
DEI
Oh
capacity.
no,
So,
that's the only way I
right,
would do it. In and out, in
I
and out,
know now,
in and
right?
out.
So I can facilitate, but the fact that I have to work here and like try to figure
No,
out how to sell
no,
compassion,
no,
that's not, yeah, I don't
mm-mm,
necessarily think I want to do
no,
that
in and
work.
out. I'm not gonna be responsible for how you use the information I give you. No, just take it.
Yeah.
No.
So got a new role, wasn't laid off, I don't think even a month, and then heard, excuse me, heard that the rest of my team had been laid off maybe 2 months later. So we went from a team of one in DEI to a team of seven, back down to one in
Wow.
14 months. So yeah, and now I work at another coaching company, and I've been very fortunate to um, just coach, just coach. Right?
Mhm,
Nobody's expecting me to do anything besides show up and coach my clients.
mhm. I
And
love it.
in the process, it has, now I'm doing, ironically, the missing piece for me, right? So I'm trained to have a coach certification in life coaching, health coaching, executive coaching. I
Mhm,
did a community healing justice certification when I
mhm.
started the DEI, my DEI career. Um, but coming into this company, they offer a certification, well, not a, but like 4 month training, which is basically
Okay.
a certification on mental health coaching. And
Ah,
so
interesting.
that was the one thing that I think was missing from, it's
Mhm,
like, okay, I like, now I feel like I have a full picture of how all of this works together, and how, I used to think being hard with my boundaries and choosing freedom was, that's just who I am, right? But
mhm,
now I understand, oh, this is actually a mental health imperative, right? Like when you
mm.
don't do those things for yourself, when you
Mm-hmm.
constantly sacrifice yourself and you don't hold boundaries and you constantly choose other people over yourself, that
Mm-hmm.
damages your mental health. When you're
Mm-hmm.
constantly trying to people please the folks at work and the people in your family, and right, like that's what creates anxiety and depression. These things don't just show up.
Nope.
It's like, oh, so now I have like an action, uh, 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 like a behavior and mental health diagnosis connection. Not that I'm
Mm-hmm.
diagnosing, but I am
Right. Yeah.
clearly seeing the straight line
Mm-hmm.
between these two. Bet, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that has, I think, even further um, solidified for me the importance of how important it is for us to heal from our experiences, not just in the workplace, but also the experience, because the stuff you're doing in the workplace is directly linked to
That's an
your
extension.
family. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it's like, oh, the way you respond to your managers, how you respond to the
Mm-hmm.
people in your house or to your
Yeah.
parents.
That's the way you were
Okay,
trained. That's the way you were programmed. Yeah.
yeah, so all of this stuff is like it's undoable. Like the way
Yes.
you were programmed one way, you can deprogram.
Yes.
But it's, I mean, but it's not easy. And typically I mean, if you want to do it well, you're going to need support, a
Absolutely.
community or a support partner, right? So yeah, that's kind
But
of where I am
but what
now.
I love is it's not easy,
No,
right?
it's not.
But what I love about you is like, what, change is constant. Change is inevitable. Change is a part of the process. And I think that, so many people do have a problem, with their mental health, with their self-care, with boundaries, with, how to regulate their emotions, with all of these things because they don't accept the fact that they're going to have to change.
Yeah, well, that's, I
Somewhere
mean,
they think they can still operate the way that they are and things are just going to magically work out. But the reality is you're going to have to change and you're going to have to get help in order to change because you really cannot do it alone.
yeah, I mean,
Um,
but there's also, right, like the piece that I like to put in there, the caveat is you can't do it alone, but you also got to do the work,
oh,
right?
absolutely.
So just hiring a coach or
Yes. No,
hiring a
absolutely.
therapist is not the magic
No,
solution, right?
no.
Like you're working with someone to partner with you as you do what you have to do, right? Because I think people have this misconception that I'm going to show up and you're going to magically change and shift me. And
Hmm.
it's like, nope, we're gonna work through how you're feeling and you're gonna develop the tools and ways to respond to how you're feeling so that you
Hmm.
can continue responding and acting in alignment with your goals and your calling,
Absolutely.
as opposed to the manipulation and the abuse that you used to respond to and act in alignment with. So
Absolutely. The question I have, and Jessica, jump right in if you have any questions. So you said something really interesting, right? Like before we started that, you know, you're really not coming back to America. Like there's no place that you really want to live,
I've
right?
lived
Like
everywhere.
you've
Yeah.
pretty much lived where you wanted to live. There's nowhere. How has that, how has that helped you to be, where you are now? Like, do you think that you would have been this person, you would have had these opportunities, you would have embraced all of this if you did stay here?
I don't know. Right? Like that's hard to say. I mean, my life has led, like, yes, I feel like there's an aspect of decisions that I made, but there's
Mhm,
also life happened to me too.
mhm,
Right? Like if I hadn't gotten laid off, I don't know if I would have been looking for another. I don't know that. I know I definitely would not have. Right. So because I got laid off and I had 6 months of unemployment, I knew how to do the student loan game where you get refund
mhm,
checks, you register for
mhm,
class and spend the rest. Right. Severance. Right. So that I got laid off in February. I didn't find another job until 9 months later
okay,
in November, right? So in those 9 months, is where I was able to begin. Like, of course, my focus was, okay, let me
Mm,
get my business up and running. But
mhm.
when I realized this business thing is not as easy as one, two, three, let me find
Absolutely.
a job that's aligned with my business, right? My business is coaching. Let me find a coaching company to work for. I don't
Mhm.
know without that 9 month gap if I would have. I know I would not have, right? Because the whole time that I was working at this university, my focus was on let me get my business up to a place where I can move abroad. That was my focus, right?
Okay.
So I, and I definitely wasn't willing to take a pay cut. But because I got laid off and literally pay went to zero, I didn't mind going up to 37.5, right? So I don't remember what I was making before I got laid off,
Mhm.
but I knew I would have never taken a job making 37.5. That was at least a
Mhm.
$20,000 pay. I would not have taken a $20,000 pay cut
Mhm.
because it wasn't in my purview. It wasn't like I didn't
Absolutely.
have any frame of reference for no, I didn't have the proof to know that I could survive on a $20,000 pay cut,
Mm.
right?
You know
So
what?
only
I,
going to Mexico on unemployment and paying $300 a month for rent that I and having unemployment that was $400 a week that I realized, oh, okay, I'm straight. Like I don't really need to make that much money.
that is such a good Oh, I hope y'all are really catching this because for many of us here, right? Myself included in DC area, it's expensive as I don't know what. There's a lot of things that we feel like we can't do because we don't make enough money. And I really look at moving abroad to an area that does have a cheaper cost of living as a cheat code. You can do all of these things because you're spending less money to live. And so now you can focus on a lot of other things that you would not have been able to focus on beforehand. You have the freedom to do it. And I think a lot of people don't think of that because we're so caught up in where we are right now. And you also said something I think really powerful, that where did it come from that we have to stay in the same place? Why do we think that, because, you were born and raised, wherever it is, that now that's where you have to live the rest of your life. Like all your family is there. So you got to be there. Like, where does that come from? And, why do you feel like that that applies to you? Um,
Well, I think to be fair, right? The thing that so you asked me would I still have this life if I hadn't have left? I don't think so.
yeah.
Because a huge part of the life that I have is because what I've seen. So when you stay in the same
Mhm.
places, you still remain in the same social circles, right? All of you all have had the same experiences. Even if like my experience, my family's working class. I was the first person to go to college, the first person to get a graduate degree, right? So even if I change quote unquote social class and move to the DMV, I'm still so okay, I've left Chicago. Now I'm in the DMV. But people ain't nobody talking about moving abroad. We're gonna go to wherever we going and come back here, right? So it's still
Mhm.
more of the same. It's like big house, big car, right? These are the accoutrement of
The
success
American
here.
dream. Hmm.
So even if you move in America, you still looking, everybody's looking at
It's true.
um the same movie, the
Mhm.
same
The same
dream.
stuff. Yep. Like we
Everybody
did.
dreaming the same dream. But it's
Yep.
when I left, when I being able to leave this space, and
Mm.
even watching movies, like I was in travel groups and stuff. Like I've been in travel groups for 10 years. Since I knew I wanted to move abroad, I was in travel groups. But even for the most part, for 10 years, those people were not moving abroad, right? Like they
Mhm.
would take a
Mm.
sabbatical or
Mhm.
they would go for it because they work remote. They would go for, they would work someplace different for 2 or 3 weeks, but they wouldn't go and stay and learn the
Interesting.
language and, learn the culture. So most of us are surrounded by people who are just like us, and it's comfortable, right? So a large part of the interesting thing about growing and learning and hiring a coach is a large part of that means coming out of your comfort zone, but not
Mhm.
just coming out of your comfort zone, learning how to deal with the discomfort of change and the
Mhm.
discomfort of the unknown, right?
Mhm.
In a way where your nervous system can handle it. Because I think that's the other, like, that's the other piece, right? Folks will constantly tell you, oh, just do it. No, not just do it. Like, you got some, have you taken a breath work class? Like, this is where the indigenous part comes
Yeah,
in.
because everybody's different. Some people can just do it, and that's
They
okay.
can't,
It work for them,
they
but some
can't,
of them
and it don't
can't.
work for them. But because they don't have a therapist, they don't know it's not working for them. They don't know that like anxiety is not, that's not a requirement of the journey. Like, you actually, anxiety and depression are not requirements just because you're changing your life and shifting your life or doing certain things. But most people who haven't had the benefit of working
Mhm.
with a trained, qualified professional to help
Mhm.
them support their own nervous system don't know that that's for them and everybody around them, that's the norm. So yes, I feel anxious and afraid and my heart is jumping out my chest, and but I'm
Mhm.
still just do it. This is why folks, many of us at 50 are dying from heart attacks and unknown things, because we haven't learned how to actually work with our body,
Mhm.
right? Like, your body is giving you information. You got to
Absolutely.
respond to that, not ignore it, move past it, push
Absolutely.
the, oh, like, nah.
Absolutely.
But yeah, so why we don't leave, that's why we've been trained. First of all, America is the greatest marketing machine on earth. We have
Ain't
marketed to
that
the
the truth?
world and us. Literally, nobody spends more money on marketing than the USA. So the USA has trained its inhabitants and the world that this is the greatest place on earth, and you'll never want to live nowhere else. Everywhere else is more dangerous, even though nobody in the world has as many mass murders as the US.
Listen, she done said a mouthful, y'all. She literally has said a mouthful that we have been conditioned.
Yeah,
They have programmed us to believe the hype. We have drunk the Kool-Aid and we live here.
yeah.
We see what's going on and we still drank the Kool-Aid.
There's a song, Most Def, Black Star, that I think it's called Brown Skin Lady. And at the beginning, there's a snippet, and he says, even our conditioning has been conditioned.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely. Jessica, say something.
I've been listening. I have been taking in everything she's saying. I'm like, woo, 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 woo. But the question I have is more or less around what are some of the differences? You talked about some of the ways in which America is like this whole get the biggest house, get the biggest car. But some of the countries that you visited, what have been the things for them that's been like their goal or what they want to attain to?
Their dream, right? Not the American dream, but these other dreams in these other places.
So the
Yeah.
interesting thing is, for a lot of places, America is the dream, right? I
Mhm.
told you, America is this. Marketing is like nowhere else. So a lot of people are trying to get to America because they see many of us, right? It's like, oh my gosh, if Black women, who in many cases, right, you already have Black people and then you have women, right? When we're thinking about who has quote unquote supposed power, it's like, if Black
Mhm.
women can make it out, I mean, they're able to travel the world, right? So they see Black Americans doing things like traveling the world, and they assume if they get to America, they too
Yeah.
can try, right, can do these things.
Mhm.
So there's that piece. There's people who actually dream of going to America. Then you have people who don't dream of going to America, and they prioritize things like family, right? So like having dinner with family, like work being a necessary thing that you do so that you can have an amazing life, so you can live a peaceful life, so that you can spend time actually enjoying your life, as opposed to work being the central force of all activity. I think those are two of the biggest things.
And so I'm curious. So I know Mexico is where you are right now. You've been a lot. Well, tell our audience, like, where are some of the places that you've been? So you said about 23
This
countries,
year.
something like that. Just whenever, and like, what have been some of your favorite places specifically for Black women?
So this is hard, right? Because I am a Black woman, but I'm a
Mhm.
specific kind of Black woman, right?
Well, we
Let's
know
be
we're not
fair.
monolithic, so
Well, I know that, but I mean, like, let's be fair, right? Like, I'm the kind of person that loves growth. I love,
Mhm,
like, for most things, look like a personal develop or like a personal development exercise for me, right?
mhm.
So, and I love massages. So, Thailand, Chiang Mai was my absolute favorite. Chiang Mai was my favorite, just because massages. There were massage places on corners like liquor stores,
Wow.
like like you could get a massage, and the massages, I mean, from $6 to $50 you could get a massage. So there were, like, if you wanted a massage for dessert, a massage on your way home, you know what I mean, we went to dinner, let me stop and get my legs and my feet rubbed,
Wow.
and then I'm ahead in the house, right? Like, it was, that was my absolute
So how
favorite.
do you know you're getting a good massage therapist? It's so prolific, it's everywhere. Like what would be considered a good massage?
I was going to ask that, and let me add into addition to that, how you know it's a massage and
Well,
not
that
something else
yeah.
in there.
Usually there's something else, like they do both. Usually it's not just something like you, so they'll ask you if you want a happy ending,
There we go.
right? So
Got it.
yeah, so but that don't mean that so in
They
Thailand in
trained in all
particular,
of it.
one thing that I think what I was interesting, um so you know how back in the day, like, your last name was an indicator of what your family did,
Yep.
right? So the Smiths were usually blacksmiths,
Hmm.
right? So it was so in Thailand, I find most families have um a massage. Like, there's, I'm not going to say most families, but a lot of families have, like, there's a massage therapist in the family.
I see.
Um and so, Thai, they have their own, they're like, Thai
Yes.
massage is
Yep.
a thing,
It's
right? So
different.
they have
Yeah.
their own modality
Yep.
where it's you don't get undressed. They give you like a
Hmm.
two-piece, and they are like pulling and
Yep.
stretching, and
I was about to say it's like
they're
stretching.
doing some kneading,
Hmm.
which is what we're used to, but it's also about lengthening the muscle and, right, increased mobility and that kind of thing.
Hmm. Hmm.
And so, yeah, I mean, they know their modality back and forth. So I when I think back, I don't think I ever had a bad massage in
Okay.
Thailand.
Because
Now,
that's what they do. That's like a family. They pass it down.
that's like, yeah, like,
Hmm.
it's kind of like, let me see. Now, I did have a bad, it wasn't bad, but it wasn't good. Like a scrub. Like, I had paid for a scrub and the water was cold. That wasn't good. And she did ask me, did I want a happy ending? I was like, no.
Okay. Okay. It's just an obvious question. So, who is doing the happy ending for the women?
Well, it was a woman massaging me. And she certainly asked. And I was like,
I
no.
was like, wait. Like, I want to make sure that I'm hearing this correctly. Like, or does somebody else enter in and
It was only her and I in the room with nobody else in there.
maybe they got somebody behind the curtain, waiting to come out just in case you say
Yeah, I
yes.
don't
I
think
don't
so.
know.
I don't think so. I'm pretty
That's
sure
a
it was
lot of
her.
assumptions. Okay.
I'm pretty sure it was her.
Well, I need to talk to somebody who has taken part. But anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, I can't help you there.
Like, I need to know how this works.
But yeah, so the Chiang Mai, Thailand was my favorite place for massages. But Sevilla, Spain was a beautiful city. Like,
Mhm.
it was like, there was just like, there was a river going through it, and the history of the city is the Moors were there. And I don't know if you are familiar with the Moors,
Mhm.
right? I only had heard about the Moors from, like, really super duper conscious people, so I just thought they was BSing.
No.
But I just thought they was full of sugar honey ice tea. But because, folks just go so hard in the paint, and it's like, are you okay? But to be there and, be on a tour and see, like, the impact that Black people had on
Mhm.
this area.
Mhm.
And while I was there, so I'm a really big Alchemist person. I don't know if you've read The
Mhm.
Alchemist. Like, I got an
Absolutely.
Alchemist tattoo some years back.
Okay.
And so that particular part of Spain is the Andalusia region, which is where the alchemists started. This is where
Oh.
Santiago was
And I'm
from.
about to say, you all know The Alchemist, the
I
novel.
hope so. If you
Um,
don't, please read it, Paulo
yeah,
Coelho, especially if you want to increase your capacity
yeah.
to move around. If you really want to create, shift your belief system around change and moving, read The Alchemist, right? And so, Santiago was in the Andalusia region and he
Mhm.
went to
Okay.
Tangier and he took the ferry over to Tarifa. So, I mean, I couldn't
Okay.
be in the area and
I'm
not
like, I'm
take
in
it.
my
I'm
element.
like, I got like, it was just like whole, it felt like a spiritual experience. Like I got to
Mm.
go down to Tangier and take this ferry over to Tarifa, Morocco. Like I have to. So
Love
I
it.
did. And that, I mean, that was amazing too, to like be able to see Africa and like imagine. Now, mind you, it's a
Mhm.
fictional story, but I don't care.
Still,
In my
yeah.
mind, it's real. I done read the book 5 or 6 times.
I was about to say for many, is read it multiple times, so I
It's
understand.
a real experience. So I'm standing on the Spain and I'm looking and I can see like literally the continent. And I get over to Morocco and I
Wow,
got henna. And
that's dope.
I went to the what are the baths? Hammam.
The
I,
Hammams. Mhm.
listen, it was like that was a completely magical experience too. So yeah, between those,
Wow.
I'm kind of
Any
torn
place.
between them two.
So okay, so knowing that, right? Like, why Mexico? Like, why is Mexico home base?
It's familiar. I did a reading, a spiritual reading some years back, and I was told that my ancestors actually came through Louisiana to the Chesapeake Bay area and then through Central and South America, which is
Mm.
very interesting because I do have family who was from in Louisiana, and then I lived in Maryland, and then
Mhm.
came here. So it like this feels like Mexico feels like home.
Okay.
Um, yeah, just feel like it feels familiar. So I think,
Mhm.
like I said, I had this reading, and I'm like, it kind of matches. Like even when I went to Europe, it was great, but I was like,
Mhm.
yeah, this pound and euro situation, take me back to the pesos. Not to
That's
mention the culture in Latin America is a very warm, welcoming space. I'm
mm.
comfortable with the language, right? So I've been taking Spanish classes since high school. I remember taking a Spanish class,
I did
took
too, but I
Spanish
don't.
in college. So I've been familiar with the language.
Mhm.
Even though I'm my fluency level is increasing, I'm familiar with the language. To live any place else that's not Spanish speaking, living to learn another language, and I'm good. I think I don't know. I like Spanish. It feels comfortable. To be fair, I hate French. I was like something about this, but then I did a DNA, African ancestry, and they told me my
Mhm.
ancestors were from Gabon. Gabon was colonized by the French, so I think that's why me and French are like absolutely not. So I think it's genetic that me and French are just like nah,
I
homie.
was about to say, I'm like, I mean, they're different, but their
The
roots
language,
are
I mean,
similar.
the language itself, I'm just like absolutely not. So Spanish speaking countries, which is basically Central and South America.
So for
um,
somebody watching this, right, and they're like, okay, this sounds good. I wanna dip my toe. Like I want to try this out. Like I really want to, find a home outside of the US. Like where would you recommend them trying first?
Playa del Carmen. Playa del Carmen is like only because now here's the thing, it's full of tourists. It is not going to
Mhm.
give you an authentic living abroad experience. But truthfully, again, we talking about nervous system adaptation,
Mhm.
right? Do you really want to be in a place where you don't speak the language, don't nobody look like you, don't nobody
Mm.
speak your language, nothing is familiar, everything is hard? Absolutely not. Well,
Yeah.
that's not how I choose to live my life.
I
That's not the kind of
I'm gonna
experience
assume if they
I
leave
want.
here, that's not the experience that they want. So
Right?
you just
So I gotta say, go Playa is like a soft landing,
mm,
right? Because it's a beach town, there's massages and nail shops for every price point. Now,
mhm.
if you try to hook up with the black expats, they're gonna always take you to the most expensive places
Really?
because most people when they showed up to Playa, they had money or they
Mhm.
connected with people who had
Right.
money. So they didn't have to, even though it was quote unquote cheaper,
Mhm.
they weren't looking for something that was within a lower budget.
I see.
I moved to apply on unemployment. So when I showed up, I'm like, how much?
That's still too
Where,
much.
where the next place at?
Right.
Right. So being there for 5 years has helped me to find some of the best places for the best
Mm.
prices. Right. So I'm not using Google. I'm not the places I
Mhm.
go to, I didn't use Google or Yelp or any of these places to find. Most of the people who are in Playa showed up within the last 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, it's gotten, yeah.
Right. So and so, most people, I mean, are if they're there, yeah, it's not their fault that they only know the most expensive things. Because in their purview, it's a good deal,
It's
right? It's
still,
a good
I was
price.
about to say, yep, for
But they
us.
don't, but
And
it's
I
like
did
this,
hear that it was getting more expensive
it
because
is. It
of all the
has.
tourists. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
But it's a soft landing. So go there, get your feet wet, force. But because it's such a soft landing and it's so familiar, it's also a good place to test getting out of your comfort zone.
Mhm.
Right. So for me, it was a place where I took my tourist places tend to have language schools.
Yeah.
So it's a good place to start learning the language, right? Because
Mhm.
if you're already stressed out and overwhelmed, that's not a good internal environment for learning. But if you can calm yourself, spend some time in the ocean, right? There's plenty of spas there. You can begin to like really heal your nervous
Mhm.
system so that you can get comfortable with the unknown. But again, many people do not have that inclination. So if you go down there and you immediately hook up with the community that's
Mhm.
there, you're gonna be in that same cycle of not learning, not growing, not going outside of your comfort zone that you had in the States. It's just now you got it with people who are in another country.
So doing the same things that
You
you've
gonna
always done, just in a
Yep.
different space.
So again, that's where having support is helpful.
Mhm.
But also, yeah, you can inch outside of your comfort zone,
Mhm.
right? That's where I got real comfortable with the language. And now like I don't mind, I can go wherever in the country and it's
I
what it
love
is.
it.
It's good.
I love it. No, I think that's so important. I mean, that just reminds me like, my journey, when I first started and back then it was like unheard of. But when I got fired from my job in social work and I knew I was like, oh, well, I'm gonna just start my own business because this is not how healing works and I want to do it my way. But before I did that, I literally took 6 months. I took 6 months,
Yes.
like, my 6 month healing sabbatical, and I did my own work. And all I did was focus on my own healing, learning healing. And that's when I studied, Reiki and life coaching and, crystals and aromatherapy and hypnotherapy,
Yep.
just everything. I needed that time. I couldn't just go from that one space right into the
The
next.
frying
I
pan.
needed that reprieve.
Yeah.
And I mean, that was one of the best decisions that I ever made. And I definitely, recommend. And that's why I asked that question, because I do think, if some of us, we decide to leave, like, we're gonna go hard. Like, we gonna go for, okay, I started here, I'm gonna go all the way over here.
You're gonna be
And
miserable.
sometimes you don't need to do all of that. You know, a couple of years ago, I spent 6 months in Vegas, and it was really wonderful because it wasn't leaving the country, but it did get me out of my comfort zone. I was in a different space, meeting different people. And that experience said to me, you know what, when I go back, there's changes that I can make. I don't have to live the way that I've been living,
Yeah.
for all this time. And so I did. When I got back, I made changes. And so even sometimes just going to a different state, right, that you haven't been,
Yeah.
it just gives you a different lease on life. So sometimes it is just taking those baby steps or those micro steps, and you kind of work up. But yeah, I think that is so important. So I'm so glad that you said that. Like, we
Yeah.
need that. We need that reprieve. We need that detox. We need a reset. Like, this life we live in.
Yeah. And you don't realize it until you come out of it. Like you don't realize the impact it's had on your sleep, on how you think, on
Yes,
how you breathe, on how you show up in the world until you come out of it.
absolutely.
Um, so yeah.
Yeah, and I want to, before we end this, I do want to go back to our 23 countries because you didn't list them all. I would love
Oh,
to have you list them all.
so I
We started in Mexico. Where did we go
so I
to?
actually checked. It's 19.
Okay.
If my list is right. So I've been to Morocco, Nigeria, Hong Kong, Indonesia, Malaysia, Myanmar, Thailand, Croatia, France, the Netherlands, Spain, the UK, Belize, Canada, Costa Rica, Puerto Rico. Oh, that's not a country. Colombia and Peru.
Okay. Y'all got
Wow.
it.
I had to check my app. Like, I
Yeah.
think I'm
What
keeping
else is
track.
left?
And so she said Thailand and Spain. Those were her favorites. So,
Yeah,
you can do with that what you will.
Did you choose to
In
do with it?
Mexico,
it's
Playa del Carmen
home.
is a soft
Right.
space to fall.
And what
Yeah.
apps do you use? You use an app to track or?
So yeah, it's called Ben, 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 the Ben app. And so
Okay.
yeah, it shows you a cute little
Where you
picture
been?
of where you been.
Oh, nice. Awesome.
So yeah, I
Okay.
don't count, but I do try to keep track because I'm like, where have I been?
I'm like, I
So
need to do that.
That's
yeah,
why I asked because we are looking to start
Because you
traveling
do
next year.
forget. That's the sad. The
exactly.
older you
Is
get, you just
Costa
start
Rica
to
on there?
forget.
My mother told me I've had more experiences than most. I have forgotten more experiences than most people have.
It's true. It
I
is
do
so
be forgetting
true.
stuff.
I mean, I was, I'm thinking about writing a book and I was talking to this guy. He was asking me questions and I was like, dang, I forgot about all this stuff until you asked me. And he said, that's why you need to write a book. Like you're literally losing out on memories
Yeah,
and knowledge just because you're just going to forget. And I was like, dang, I'll be forgetting all the stuff I know. You were so right.
seriously.
So, yeah.
And I am working on a guide too, right? So I put it out there because I have a guide that I've been kind of shopping around to friends of
Okay.
for one, all the places that I've been, but primarily the it started out with all my favorites, like my absolute favorites in Playa del Carmen. But then I started traveling more. I kind of picked up this nomad thing again, picked up the nomad mantle. And I was like, well, let me start because I'm going to all these other places. Let me add in some little thing. So I'll send you all the link for
Yeah,
that.
no, I think that's awesome. And I think a lot of people are there, right? Because once you get that freedom and you realize you don't have to be in one space, you do want to, travel to all of these different spaces to check them out. Why not? Like,
Yeah.
I have no one to answer to. I have no place I have to be. So why not try it? So that's becoming more and more popular. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
So yeah,
But I think more than going to Playa del Carmen, figure out
Mhm.
what you enjoy and go somewhere where that is the name of the game.
That's a good, yeah.
Right?
So
Because Playa del Carmen is you know how I went to Playa del Carmen? I saw it on somebody's shirt. I didn't do research. I promise you.
but everybody's ended up there. I mean, it just seems like so many people, if they haven't, lived there, they've at least been through there. Like it's become extremely popular, and I get it
Mm-hmm.
because when I was in Cancun area, I wasn't in Playa del Carmen, but I was around. When I was there, I could see it because it's so close to the U.S. I mean, the
It's
weather,
easy. It's pretty. There's flights
beaches,
every
it's
day.
inexpensive. I was just like, I could see this. It was just nice. I mean, I was there for a week and I was like, I need more time, like just to whew.
I'm
So
telling you.
I
I was
understand.
like 3 years in, I'm like, all right, girl, come on. We gotta
Yeah.
find somewhere else. I'm like, I can't
understand
get
it.
another massage. I didn't got massages from I got the Thai massage lady and the deep tissue massage lady and the lady who does the cupping with her massages. Like, girl, you massaged out. Like you good. So now that's like my quarterly reset place. It's like, all right, I'm gonna go do this now. I'm gonna pay. Let me go to Playa, press reset. So,
I love it. So, hopefully this has helped you all who are watching. You got an action plan. Natasha, any final thoughts for our viewers?
Wherever you are, whatever it is that you're doing, always remember that freedom requires three things: Fear. So if you're afraid, it's a good thing. Faith, because if you have fear, and you're trying to create something you've never seen, you need faith in order to do so. And friends, because wherever you're going, there you always going to need someone to support you, to lean on, and to share the load. So, freedom requires fear, faith, and friends. I think those are the last note that I would like to leave us on.
Love it. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Jessica, anything else you want to add?
No, not at all. Letitia, if you come up with any worksheets that'll help us identify where we should be going based upon our our likes and beliefs and all that good stuff, that would be amazing. So please let us know if you come out with that.
Okay.
But no, this has been amazing, amazing. I love the storytelling. So amazing job telling your story and just giving us an inside and outside view of just all of the things. Like, man, yeah, you've really made me think. I have no words because I want to go into a whole nother session, but I'm not going to do that here.
That's what ends up happening.
Right.
But I mean, that's what we love. Like, right, there was a lot of gems dropped. So you might want to go back and and watch it again, because there's so many different things that you can pull from depending on where you are. So we hope you have enjoyed this live edition. We hope to see you next time. We'll be back, I think, next Thursday, 12:15 p.m. Eastern. Until that time, make sure you subscribe, make sure you watch, like, comment, share. And, we appreciate your sponsorship and your donations. And we will see you next time. Bye, y'all.
Bye, y'all.